We interrupt Adam Luckett's vacation for some breaking news. Vince Marrow is leaving Kentucky to head to the University of Louisville to become Jeff Brom's next general manager. Luckett, it broke while we were on the KSR happy hour. I can't say we were
Oh
taking
wow!
off.
I didn't even think about that.
Exactly. It happened in the middle of the happy hour. So I already got a little bit of initial rapid reaction. I feel like we were at least not completely taken off guard. We just didn't have the posts and everything and all that written. But it feels like we've been here before. So that's why I was initially a little bit skeptical. There was part of me I wanted to wait and see what would happen because my biggest skepticism behind it all was that what job is he going to get in June? When we first started hearing the smoke in June, what job is he going to get? And that's the job of general manager. He will be GM and it'll all them fleece the buyout clause because he's not going to be a head coach. So they don't have to, Louisville doesn't have to pay UK $200,000 for this move. Look, there's a lot to peel the onion layer back on this. There's a lot of different ways we're going to go about it as we discuss this, why it happened, why Louisville makes sense for him, what it means for Mark Stoops. But I just want your initial reaction when you were, I don't know, were you at a swim up bar? Like, what was happening with Adam Luckett when he learned that Vince Marrow was leaving Kentucky for Louisville?
I come back to work tomorrow, so the in-laws were like, we'll take the kids tonight. You all can go out and go have dinner or whatever. So we were at a local establishment called Taps.
Is that the place we went?
It is not. It's just like a sports bar. That's Hurricanes.
Okay.
So we're just having a couple beers, eating some wings, just kind of like enjoying the end of at least my part of not having to work part of the vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And then the phone starts going crazy, right? And so it's like, uh-oh. How am I going to like tell my lovely wife, Taylor, who I think's watching in the other room right now, all right, I need to go back right now because some crazy stuff's happening. But that's that. This is the job. This is the job. To me, Nick, the timing's awful. Like,
yes.
Absolutely atrocious timing. That was my first thought, was the timing. Like, uh-oh. I mean,
yeah.
Can Mike Hartline coach tight ends? Like, that was Kevin Barbay. Is you just gonna make him the tight ends coach? He's coached tight ends, I believe, in the past. So that was my first thought. Well, the timing's awful. Then my second thought, which is really, I think, the thought of Big Blue Nation, is just the chaos theory.
Mm-hmm.
What is it going to take for them to be for there to be a separation to happen at the top of this Kentucky football food chain? I think you would have to have, I think, some chaotic stuff happening. I think you could classify the recruiting kind of results here as being chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think this is chaos.
Chaos is a ladder. Like it. We learned that in Game of Thrones.
Because you're just letting him go to your arguably the school you have to defeat, not necessarily on the field, but off the field to be a success here. Is the school down the road. I think that's been proven over the last 20 years. It's hard for you to have success if they're doing well, and vice versa for them too. So he's going there, and Vince understands what that means,
right? Well, and I want to get to that, but as part of the timing too, they just have had 20 official visitors over the last 2 weekends. You need your best recruiter recruiting for you right now, not going to the other school. As we kind of laid out in last week's 11 personnel too. The way we talked about how, hey, they're not recruiting Kentucky or Ohio. Like, what? That, and then you hear the smoke, and it's just, oh, so this is all about to blow up. And I think that is going to be the legacy of this move, is that it is going to probably be the straw that breaks the camel's back for Mark Stoops, because it is the manifestation of the disrepair that the state of the program is currently in. That, I mean, Vince Marrow wasn't just tight ends coach, and he wasn't just a lead recruiter. I would argue that his most important job at Kentucky was being the duct tape for the football program. Like, a lot of times when things were going wrong, when your star players were unhappy, they were going to Vince Marrow, and he was making sure that everything was okay, and you would live to go another week. I mean, think back to, and I don't know this to be the case for in all the instances, but how bad it was at South Carolina when Ray Davis is tweeting about, I thought I was the bell cow back. Well, then the next week he's throwing L's down and you're beating Louisville and everybody's happy because it's in Jack Harlow's face. Like, pretty sure Vince Marrow put out that fire. I know the Lynn Bowden situation when 2019 was happening. I know Vince Marrow was making sure that Lynn wasn't just going to quit on the team because that was very much on the table, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff over the years that have happened that this could have blown up a lot sooner, but Vince was there to kind of keep it all together. And now, like, the people on our message board who are paying attention to this stuff, Luckett, who are in the weeds, they can kind of see the signs that it's a cluster over there. This is the ultimate sign that, like, even Johnny Wildcat, who's hanging out at Khalil's, I don't know what Khalil's isn't there no more, but you get my point, right? Like, that he's the most well-known assistant coach in this program's history. He's probably the most, like, you were talking about high approval ratings. Like, everybody knows Vince. Everybody loves Vince. They probably get frustrated when he does the job stuff. But if he's leaving your program, this is a canary in the coal mine situation for all the casual football fans. For the people who were clamoring to say, well, maybe Mark Stoops, we'll give him one more year. Maybe he's still got it. I think this move is going to turn a lot of fans to say, well, Stoops is done. Like, this is it.
I think that's the natural reaction here.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's hard not to jump to that conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Wan'Dale Robinson, like, they got Wan'Dale Robinson because of Vince. Nick, you've heard the stuff I heard when they beat Brom's first team. Like, Vince was the catalyst, the blood behind keeping that locker room together for one more
game
counter
right.
run.
It was a rally the troops.
Right. Terry Wilson probably isn't here if Vince isn't on the staff. Right.
Yep.
They got Dare Rosenthal. They got Dare Rosenthal because of a relationship Vince had.
Yep.
With aspirationship, to my knowledge.
Darian Kennard, All-American offensive tackle. Benny Snell. Vince was the guy who had to push all the chips in to get Benny Snell to UK.
Yeah, but even, like, I think Kentucky got to past the point where they were just like this Ohio just kind of feeder system.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's where Vince kind of showed his value when he started recruiting in state.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, he started to own it. I do think things got a little complicated in this new era because it's just different for Vince.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the most interesting part of this for me is he's going to work in personnel, not to work in coaching.
Which feels like a more natural fit, for being candid.
And I think we talked about this come to Jesus staff meeting that Mark Stoops said they had. What went on in that staff meeting? Like, that is something I would like to know. Something went on there. And then after that, their recruiting strategy, I feel like, changed. I think it became a lot more positional recruiting, each guy kind of taking ownership of filling their room. And then I think for Vince, it seems like, just from my angle, it seems like he maybe lost some power there. And I go back to that interview he went on with Matt in the radio show crew. Whenever that was a weird, everyone walked away from that interview was like, that was kind of weird.
Yeah.
When he kind of, like, the Louisville rumors were out there and he kind of denied them. I think it was right around January.
Yeah.
Time. So that was weird. I think, knowing what we know now, it's clear he was trying to jump off this ship. Yeah, I think most people jump to Stoops is done. But I also think, like, there was an issue for him where he was overpaid as an assistant coach. So there wasn't another landing spot for him to go from tight end coach to coach at another power conference school.
Mm-hmm.
Probably figuring out how to find a home in this new college football era that we're entering with revenue sharing, assigning dollar figures to players, and kind of working through all of that. And I think Louisville, was the most active participant on the other end of that.
Yeah. Well, from the specific Louisville
at this point,
like Jeff and Vince played together for the Orlando Rage in the XFL, so their relationship goes back 25 years. Jeff actually tried to hire multiple Stoops assistants. He tried getting John Summerall. He also tried getting Vince Marrow during his time at Purdue. There was a time when he first got the job at Louisville that they talked about, like there were conversations about Vince coming over, but it didn't make dollars and cents. And then that bubbling boiled over even more so at the end of last year, where we heard stuff on the day of the Governor's Cup that those two sides were in talks. But it was, how was this going to work, right? And then ultimately, I don't know if Vince was ready to go all the way there. Like, I think there was a part of him, like, this guy loves being loved. He's a very well-liked individual. I think he loved that Big Blue Nation loved and embraced him. And I don't think he was willing to throw that all out until it was maybe that meeting. I don't know exactly when. But Stoops and Marrow had a falling out. Like, I can't pinpoint the day. There's a falling out that happened. I don't know exactly when. It probably was that meeting, because to go back to the Kentucky side of why he was so angry with how things were going that he felt the need to leave, him and Eddie Grant have not gotten along. They got along initially when Eddie was OC. It was fine. They would have their recruiting button heads back and forth. You had that time when Eddie got all those kids in the class of 17 from Florida. And, so there was some push and pull there. But then when Eddie returned as it wasn't the GM right away. He was special assistant to the head coach. That formed into a more general manager role. And my theory that I've gathered with talking to people is that meeting that we talked about, Luckett, is that Vince, there's always politicking over who gets what players. Whether it's Eddie, whether it's Wolf, whether it's a wide receivers coach, there's always politicking amongst coaches for players. But for the longest time, Mark would just automatically defer to Vince Marrow and Dan Brezowitz. And then he started not always agreeing with Vince, and he would side with Eddie. That started building up. And I think at that meeting, I think Vince wanted to reassert himself, and not only got shut down, but also seemingly said, actually, we're going to downgrade. We're going to demote you. We're not only are you not 1A, you're 2. Now, I don't know what exactly that looks like and how that was rattled off or whatever. But, like, that's the sense that I got. And the politicking is ultimately the part where I think that really pushed Vince all the way over the top, because he felt betrayed that he had done all this for the program, and it got to this point because Stoops let him do what he did best. And now when you're struggling, you're going away from that. And so I think Vince felt the need, like, well, if they're going to go away from me, then I need to get out now, and I need to go away from them and find a landing spot elsewhere.
Yeah, I think the Grand thing is something you can bring up, but it's not just Grand. Like, when Cohen was here,
Yes.
This was an issue.
Correct.
This was just an issue. Now, I haven't heard specifically about Vince and Bush Hamden button heads about what type of players to take.
Mm-hmm.
But I have heard and sensed some rumblings of just I don't think everyone in that building loves how they evaluate in the process of that. Now, and what that really means is, like, when push comes to shove, we're taking A, we're not taking B.
Mm-hmm.
We're definitely not taking C. Where I think some in the building probably thought C, like, jumped the pack when really they shouldn't even been in consideration. There was a lot of that going on, because I think Vince there for a while, to your point, Nick, had kind of full autonomy to take whoever he wanted, and, like, didn't even have to.
Right.
Because what I want folks to kind of know here is this is like when you recruit, it's kind of like hiring people. to do jobs. But it's not just one HR person that's doing the hiring in a system like this. There's like a system of checks and balances you should be going through when you have continuity per se. I just don't think that was happening all the time. But you could go back in the past, Nick, like we've talked about. Vince kind of got in this position of power because out of necessity. They couldn't get guys. So they unleashed Vince. Like there was the year, I think it was 2018, they didn't get a Kentucky kid.
Yeah. And so they sent him and they got J.J. Weaver and all those guys.
So like they missed on Jed Wills. They missed on Damian Harris. Those are the two big ones people remember. And basically Stoops' kind of fix for that problem was Vince, stop focusing so much on Ohio. I need you to go get players out of our own state. And he worked, like he was really good at that, right? And even the guys he missed, he came back and landed later. When you look at, like, Wandell Robinson, but Jared Casey, name people forget, was a big in-state recruit that spent the time in Oregon, and they went and came back. And so he's a supernova in a lot of ways. But I think, again, they kind of they've really let Vince kind of spread his wings and do his thing, but it necessarily hasn't worked out well for them. But at the same time, the sport changed drastically.
Right.
And how you build rosters just kind of changed really overnight. And for him, it's kind of like finding his place. And that's why I think for him, it was attractive for him to go be a GM at another power conference school. I think it just not a good look for the program. One, that it happens again at this point in the calendar, and two, that it's happening with Louisville, because no matter who the next coach is, that's something they're going to have to deal with. And we know Vince can really recruit both in the state and Ohio. And I think long term, I know people I think it's easy to scoff at kind of what Kentucky has gotten out of in-state recruits. It's probably not been the return on investment they needed, but you kind of have to live with the highs and the lows of that.
Yeah.
You need to get the best player, the best prospects in your state. You need to get them here. And it makes Louisville's recruiting run, Nick, make a lot more sense. Like how much recruiting was going on under the table.
Oh, yeah, because we mentioned the players that are right up Vince's alley that seemingly ended up at Louisville, right? Like, hold up, you didn't get this kid? Why? Like, this is your guy. How
does let's just ask this, because this is not just a Vince rapid reaction. This is kind of like, okay, Stoops, what are you doing here? Are they just going to pretend like it's not a big deal? I don't think that's a good idea.
He's got to get more motivated.
I think I don't know how you address it, but some way you have to address this. Are you just going to wait till we see you in Atlanta, or shows up in Atlanta, which is typically the only time he talks in the summer? I just don't know how they're going to go about it. They're just fighting a constant PR battle.
Oh, and this is a terrible one too, because
a lot of times they're not willing to engage in the fight, right? They're just like this whole really the last two off seasons they have been willing to just kind of sat out and let people form their own opinions.
And now you're losing your most recognizable voice. And I think that's the part that, like, Vince was, in a lot of cases, Mark Stoops' best PR man, right? Like, he could articulate 100%. What Stoops couldn't always say.
He was the guy that was a spokesperson, was the mediator, and that had relationships. Not only, like, he had relationships, like everyone knows, he had some relationship. He was like the media relations person over there, outside of the SID department, but he's also really tight with the Crafts. Another question.
That's a big, yeah.
How does this change that relationship?
Yeah. I don't know, man. I'm getting some serious.
Makes you wonder. Again, I think I'm going to say makes you wonder. I think is my new catchphrase for Kentucky football offseason.
Well, and there's very much a big, like, the diehard football fans who want some good news think that Mark Stoops might be asleep at the wheel, and this just gives them more ammunition to say, well, you let this guy just leave? and go to your biggest rival, and that's like, I just can't.
Well, that's why I think you have, this is not Sons of Anarchy, or this is not like high school, but you got to kind of clap back. You know what I'm saying? Like, you kind of have to.
You got to do something.
Yeah, you can't just sit here. You can't sit here and let Louisville take one of your best assets. Or one of you, on the surface, at least, what people think is a really good asset for you. Now, I think there's some in the recruiting space, specifically with the new rules, would argue, well, he's not, his value is not what it used to be. But still, like, even if you believe that or not, I don't think being quiet would be people want to hear. No one's asking for my advice, but if you did, my advice would be, you've got to do, you've got to show some signs of life here. Like, are you motivated? Show us you're motivated here. It just opens that can of worms that's kind of like, really, Nick, it's kind of organically kind of created in the fan base, but it's not necessarily something I think's been positive overall, even though it's been, I think, funny for people online. And this is just another thing, and it's like, how do you have any faith that they're gonna change? It's almost getting to a point where just what is played out in the public space, it feels like, man, we're just kind of kicking the can down the road here. We all know how this is going to end. It's just, how long does it take us to get there, right? And it's unfortunate for everyone. And it's a terrible place to be, I think, for every angle. But that's just kind of what it feels like right now. It sucks for everybody.
Well, not all entirely for me. I just got breaking news, too. Toddler just pooped on the potty for the first time, so we get ice cream later. So, big news at the Roush house.
Which is kind of an omen, right? Like, celebrating poop here.
Seriously. Oh, man, that really is the case. But this is jarring. It's shocking, and it is destabilizing an already unstable process.
A big celebration at the Roush house. I think Nick went silent there.
Yeah, he was telling me that I didn't get ice cream. So, but nevertheless, it's crazy news. There's head spinning right now. I think just in the immediate, like, what do they do? You mentioned the promoting either one of the two coaches.
CJ Conrad's out there too.
Yeah, CJ Conrad could happen. I will say though, I'm sure CJ and Vince have been talking. CJ might have to be like, well, do I want to do that? But that's a job, if he gets offered it, he has to take, just like an SEC position.
Well, Kent State's got an interim head coach. Like, he's got to find a landing spot for him.
So that would make sense as well. So those are three options just as a replacement. But the damage, it's serious, it's significant. And the other part, too, that I'm curious about, like, how much of it is the traitor comments are we going to get from about Vince Marrow from fans? And how much of it, though, will be celebrated as, like, thanks, Vince, for, like, getting this ball rolling? Because I'm fascinated on that reaction from Big Blue Nation. I don't really know what it's going to be. I'm sure there's some shock. But then after that, is it all anger at Vince? Or is it, like, good riddance? Like, let's get everybody out of there. Let's completely clean house.
It depends what happens over the next, like, 18 to 36 months, to me.
Or fewer, like, yeah. But yeah.
Like, what is direction of the program? In 2 years, how's Kentucky recruiting against Louisville? Does it even matter in kind of this portal era? I think we just don't. It's hard to forecast that.
Yeah.
Nick, I'm not want to speak for you, but and I don't want to be too online. I don't want to be online all a year. Because that you can just get overwhelmed.
Right.
Logging on to twitter.com every day. But this is as down. This is the most down I've ever heard of fan base.
Yeah.
On a team. Well, that it's not like.
It was different with Joker. It was different.
It's a totally different game because Kentucky is at least in the neighborhood right now, talent-wise, where they weren't. they were staying at the trailer park down the street with Joker.
Right.
Talent-wise, it was just striking. The difference. I don't think they're there yet. I still think they're in kind of the ballpark roster-wise. Because they were like 2 tiers from the bottom of the league at that point with Joker. But like people they're just done. And it's just like, how do you just even survive this?
You know
what I'm saying? Like, you're just going to put it in its simplest terms as possible. Like, I would love to hear what the meaning is at UK. How are we going to, what's our plan here, guys? Because as soon as something bad happens this season, in my opinion, people are just going to be done. Absolutely done. And then what does that mean, and what does that look like when you have games in November? I think I've talked about this. I don't think it's been talked about much. At least I haven't heard anyone else but me talk about this. But I was at that last game. And usually you can't hear stuff through the press box window, but I heard loud chants that last game for another coach to be here. Like, does that become a thing in the stadium this year? It feels like it might. And just how do you kind of, that's something you just have to kind of deal with. And it's no fun for anyone to deal with on either side.
This is it's the giant explosion before the crumble collapse. The collapse is not inevitable, but this was the giant bombshell that is really turning everything upside down. You can survive a bad year. It's going to be very hard to survive this for Mark Stoops. He's backed into a corner.
It's not just a bad year. It's just the whole kind of vibe.
It's
the Kentucky football ecosystem.
It's a self-implosion.
Like everyone's just rotting. Yeah.
Yes, it's an implosion from within, where it's slow. It had been slowly eroding from the outside for a couple of years. Then we had Mitch Barnhart's 1-year blip. Well, now Sampson's tearing down the columns, and the whole thing is starting to collapse. How are they going to try to stop the bleeding? It'll be fascinating to follow along. We need to get out of here, though. Lucas got to enjoy a night off, but I need to get some more work done on the website to try to make sense of this for all of our readers at KentuckySportsRadio.com. We'll be sharing our insights on KS Board. If you aren't on KSR Plus, UK1's the promo code that'll get you 2 months for $1. That's where you first heard about Vince Marrow in Louisville back on December 1st. And so, we've kind of kept you in the loop there. We're happy to share our insights on what happened, why it all unfolded now. But one of the most shocking stories in the history of the Kentucky football program, Vince Marrow is leaving Kentucky to go to Louisville. What a day. What a day. For now, that's Adam Luck, and I'm Nick Roush. Good luck.